Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's me again. It's 4:09 p.m. I managed to get back online here in record time. I hope you're still with me here in the live chat. I'm going to get underway here, unless I get a phone call. I'll continue with my talk. And if there's a problem, I'll just start it again until I get it right. Everybody in the live stream? Let me just double check my settings here. Audio. I'm getting an audio signal. Obviously, I'm on the video. Oh, there you are. Audio is good. Thank you very much. Sorry for the delay. We only lost 9 minutes. So today I'm going to be talking about the university encampment, if you will. And it's the encampment of dissent. And it'll deal with primarily, after trying to figure out how I'm going to attack this issue, this problem here, it's going to be dealing with the occult rites of spring. And this is going to be quite different from what we've been seeing on the MSN or even the independent news, right? And you've seen it all by now. I'm sure you're sick of it, so I'm not going to repeat any of the clips here. But you've seen the sort of the mainstream conservative takes on it from Fox News, or maybe you've seen some CNN sort of liberal takes on it. And you've seen some left liberal commentary on the disturbances on the campuses recently. Primarily, I've been watching Democracy Now!, hosted by Amy Goodman. And I'm going to begin by showing you a clip from the Joe Rogan Experience because, and although I make fun of his show and I call it lunkhead criticism, he got it right in this case. He says it seems like it's a cult sort of atmosphere on the campuses with all the fighting and the tussles and the tear gassing. I don't know if he's talking about the police cult, the security people, because they're a cult in themselves, or he's talking about the Palestinian side or the Jewish side, or all the different factions. They're all the different groups that are coming together in what might very well be a pseudo happening or pseudo experience, or I think it was Daniel Boorstin, the historian. He referred to it as a pseudo event. And I'll explain what I mean by that before we end this cast today. I'm going to go a little bit further, and I'm going to be offering some hypotheses. That is, I'll be speculating on who's really behind these events, because that's been the pressing question that has come up time and time again. People use the George Soros, a boogeyman figure, time and time again. They talk about the Open Society and his funding of students for justice in Palestine. And that's all well and good. That's all true. But I'm interested in who's behind Georgi Soros, right? We know about crisis actors by now. We're all fairly schooled on the different approaches that have been taken. But today I'm going to be offering you, the audience here, for your consideration. And I'm not saying that this is the answer. I'm not saying that this is even a definitive piece on my part. I've just put this together in the last couple of days, determined to put something out there by today that I thought was important, and that is to warn the people who are involved, especially the unwitting undergraduates and some of the grad students. Some of the grad students know better, but nonetheless, they're involved in a larger pseudo event that they have zero historical understanding of how it's come down. Right? We know about the battle in Seattle. This is back in 1989. It was against the World Trade Organization. That seemed to be an organic protest in Seattle, Washington. And there were different color revolutions. There were different. There was the Arab Spring, and it's all come down to what we've seen today. And a journalist hasn't really come up with some catchy phrase for what's going on now. Maybe I can suggest the Templar reunion party, the giant fraternity party, and I'll specify what I mean by that in a moment. But first, as promised, let's take a look at your lunkhead. I'm going to have to load this up, so if you'll be patient with me, I appreciate it. The lunkhead approach to this set of disturbances.
Okay, this thing that's going on right now. Well, actually, I think this thing that's going on right now couldn't be going on right now without the influence of the internet.
Right.
The internet has like created this mind virus that's sweeping through college campuses and also the universities and the Marxist philosophies that they've been pushing in universities because of they've all been infiltrated by Russia, by the former Soviet Union, and now by China and Russia together. For sure, they're influencing. They push the wokest teachers, the wokest professors, the nuttiest policies, and they're literally doing it to deteriorate the fabric of American democracy. They have like plans for it. They've thought about, like, Yuri Bezmenov talked about this in 1984.
I've seen that clip. It's crazy.
It's
okay. Joe Rogan's writers, and I don't think he writes his own material. I do, and I'm my own production assistant. They invoke the names of the usual suspects, the Russians, right? Ideological subversion. You've seen that clip of Bezmenov, or I forgot his name exactly, or the Chi-Com. He didn't mention the Chi-Coms, right? I'm sure that Alex Jones will hold down that end of the discussion, and it's pretty much an expected reactionary response on the type of Joe Rogan. His viewership is largely male and young, and probably the people who were doing the beatdowns, in uniforms, the cops and whoever they were, the mercenaries, the rent-a-cops, are big Joe Rogan fans because he comes from the so-called mixed martial arts. I call it Chinese martial arts or Kung Fu, but they can't have the Asian connection there, so they call it mixed martial arts, or they call it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But anyway, that's his demographic there. But he did get it right. There, has sort of this wasn't in this excerpt here, but he describes it as a cult-like atmosphere. All right, that's going on here. Let me take him out of the studio so I can make room for the next piece here. And this one has to do with my supporting, and you decide if the thesis of mine is valid or not. At least you'll be able to mull it over. And at least it's something way beyond in sophistication that Mika Brzezinski or Scarborough or Laura Ingram has to offer, right? And that is the really obvious observation that these events took place almost exactly around Walpurgisnacht, right? That's May Day Eve, usually on the 30th, right, April? And we'll have a clip on that in a moment. Walpurgisnacht, right? There's a novel, I can't remember the name of the person who wrote it. He was an occult writer from Germany, because this is a Germanic concept. In the German, the Teutonic element, the knightly Teutonic element will, as it comes down to the Nazis and through the Fourth Reich here in the United States, is going to become more salient as I reach into this talk a little bit further. Okay, so be patient because it's a building block process here. So Walpurgisnacht, and then on May 1st, it's May Day. That's Beltane. That goes back into the Celtic past. This is something that the Nazi ideologists, the ones who were interested in people like Heinrich Himmler, who were interested in the occult and drew upon the Germanic and Scandinavian traditions, and to a certain extent Tibetan traditions, Central European, Central Asian traditions, in order to fashion a political movement and help mobilize it. And we call it National Socialism or Nazism, right? So I think some of the smart of you in the chat here are anticipating where I'm going with this, but still be patient. Hang on. You're free to chat amongst yourself about where you think I'm going to take this. But I think some of you already have a clue. But first of all, and I'm no expert on it myself, so any of you who are a Wiccan or claim to have expertise, feel free to put in the comments below what you believe Valpurgis Nox to be or Beltane. But we'll go with a couple of clips that I came across. I'll show you one now.
Es ist ein wunderbares Fest mit Feuer, Tanz, Musik, Hexen, Magiern, gutes Essen, einfach Freude am Leben und ganz viel Spiritualität mit Kartenlegen, Handlesen, schönen Shops, wo man Besen kaufen kann zum Fliegen.
A very, very general overview, to say the least. And if you want to look more deeply into it, I invite you to do so. It's fascinating. This is a pagan part of a pagan tradition, pre-Christian, and of course elements of Christianity or elements of paganism added into what later became Christianity, and also formed the basis of late medieval secret societies. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. Late medieval secret societies such as the Knights Templar, the Hospitallers of St. John, the Knights of Malta, and these are all organizations that exist today in the 21st century. Most of you know this, so if you aren't aware of that, then this is the fault of our education, and this is what should be taught in the university. If undergraduates are being taught the real history of Western civilization, of the West, which includes the Orient, the Near East, and Asia, and Africa, and the entire world, the whole global system, and then they wouldn't fall prey to these pseudo-events that we've seen over the last several days. Now, they're irritating. They're most of them, if not all of them, are fairly obnoxious individuals. I know them. I've confronted these people many, many times in my own teaching career at the University of California, Davis, which had a token event. There was no violence of any sort that I know of, but all the other campuses, the main ones being Columbia, predictably Berkeley, but also some campuses that aren't usually associated with violent protest, or even protest in general, right? It was interesting for me for watching these clips by news people, because I've been to a lot of these campuses. I know all the different landmarks, and it's interesting to see how the protesters, I'll put that in quotation marks, how the protesters organized themselves and commandeered this sort of space that some of the more naive of them consider to be liberated zones, right? Don't you just love the rhetoric of the left? Their notion of inflated historical importance, that they are the new proletariat. I mean, I've seen that in person time and time again, but I realize you're only 20 years old once, right? So they don't know what happened 20 years ago before they were born, and that's why they have to have these every generation. There has to be renewal, just like a ritual renewal every spring. It's a rite of spring, fertility, rebirth, and of course that requires the death of a certain segment of the population. And again, I'll try to wrap this up by the time we finish today. I'm going kind of fast, I know, but hopefully I can can revisit some of these topics at a later at a later time. So we have all these encampments. Excuse me a second. And I'd like you to think about these encampments as more than just a collection of tents that all look alike. They're all bought from the same place. Oh, there must have been some sort of Soros involvement here. Yeah, there aren't very many different tent makers, and so they're going to tend to look alike, right? So they're really clutching at straws and trying to figure out what's going on here. But to the point here, the very notion of an encampment, and this is not in the dictionary. It's not in the Oxford Unabridged Dictionary. This is my gloss on the term encampment. It's beyond the legalistic terminology of one or more temporary shelters not meant to be long-term livable spaces, right? There's all these different, I looked those up, the legal definition. I'm offering an occult definition of what an encampment is, and you will see these gatherings, these amassings, in order to bring forth very strong mojo, ritual magic, right? And I can't get too deeply into it, and maybe for my Patreon supporters, I'll post one or two documents to substantiate my argument here. But I have a pretty good PDF collection of booklets, publications by Knights Templar in America here, talking about their annual encampments. They call them encampments. That's when they install the new leadership. This is when they come together as brothers to do the planning necessary for the coming year and for the decades to come. And it's not the Knights Templar only, but it's the various agglomeration or collection, some of them intersecting, of various secret societies that are not so secret anymore. A lot of us think we know what secret society. Oh, I got that. And you're going to start putting in the comments, yeah, okay, you're going to start name checking the Freemasons and blah, 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 woof, woof. But just be patient and hear me out here before you jump the gun here and think you know what you don't know. All right. So, but anyway, to finish my point, I have these copies of these books that they're more like booklets that talk about these annual Knights Templar encampments. And if you go on TubeView, you can find recordings of people in a limited fashion, because they don't give you the real deep, dark, ritualistic footage, I'm sure. But you can find it there, and we'll see one of the clips and news clips of the Knights of Malta in particular, parading openly, celebrating their 900th anniversary of existence. That's 900 years. Now, how old is the United States of America? It's not even half that old, right? How old is the American Constitution, the U.S. Constitution? It's a very young document. This is a young nation, and there's a group of individuals within American society. I'm talking about just the U.S. now, right? We'll let the other nations sort it out for themselves. But just remember that the Knights of Malta doesn't have any borders. It's not even a nation. It has diplomatic status. It has a seat in the Vatican, but it's the only country around in existence that does not have a landmass, a border, right? That's very powerful when you think about it. But it also gives them the incentive to spread out all over the world, including the United States of America. These are the Knights Templar. Don't get bogged down to the differences between the Knights Templar, the Knights of Malta, the Knights of Columbus, Boogie Knights, or whatever it is. I mean, even the experts have difficulty disentangling. The main point here is that it's not the Jews who are responsible for financing. It's not George Soros, right? and it's not boogeyman A, B, or C that we're taught through in indie media. It's not the usual suspects. It's these larger trans-historical, generationally connected operations, and they run through universities. The university, as I've always argued, when I say always, only when I got wise to it and figured this out back in 2004, that, well, in truth, I found out earlier. I only could substantiate my claims around 2004 when I started developing my own New World Order theory. But just to simplify it, the university is an occult institution, right? Occult in the broadest sense and occult in the esoteric sense of the word, but it's an occultic institution, all the way down from the cap and gowns to the various rituals that don't seem to make any sense. And this is irrespective of the arcana that we know today as DEI or critical race theory and all that stuff. That is epiphenomenal. In fact, that's sort of fog of war type of curricula that have been thrown out there to really mask what is really at play at these institutions of higher learning. All right. Are you beginning to get the picture? Good. Because the more I look into it, the hazier it gets. The more exciting it gets. Is it any accident that all this happened around Walpurgisnacht? I don't think so. Is it an accident that it happened on May Day? No. The International Communist Movement, labor, celebrates May Day. That's their holiday. Now, we Americans, and I'm a third generation American, by the way, unlike Gavin McGinnis or the other carpetbagger, Ezra Levant. I think he might be from the Levant, but they're Canadians. They're with quote unquote rebel media, and they're going to all these university campuses, right? They're provocateurs, right? That they're part of the pot boilers, right? That I'm just singling them out because McGinnis has been around being promoted by people like Alex Jones for a long, long time. And he needs to be called out. He's also the founder of the so-called Proud Boys, and the Proud Boys is infiltrated. I'm not saying he's involved in that end of it, but with a lot of informants, a lot of snitches, a lot of government, a lot of feds, just like this operation here that we saw, as most people figured out, is not an organic operation. It's full with feds and snitches and provocateurs, enchant provocateur. It's been written about extensively in the literature. G.K. Chesterton, read him, The Man Who Was Wednesday, based on a real story in London. An incredible story of one of my favorite writers. He did the Father Brown series, and he was a believer in Christ. And he had all these incredible moral lessons for us in the midst of incredible political turmoil in late Victorian Edwardian Britain. So check him out. Check out these books. Joseph Conrad, who was Polish by birth. Any number of people have written about these pseudo-events or fake events, staged events, as they've been called recently. We're not the first ones to be talking about this, but I'm putting it the perspective of a contemporary university and these characters who think they're making revolution. They think they're making a social change, and all they're doing is carrying out the agenda of the hidden hand who are who have been plucked out of the ranks of these hereditary secret societies. That's the leadership. All right. And they're also somewhat in. I can't go into all the different nooks and crannies of where they are, but they're also in the fraternities. So at a certain point, the frat boys started coming out and taunting the so-called pro-Palestinian demonstration. That was a pretty obvious ploy, and the jocks and whoever else is all there. And each one of these groups, by the way, have their bonding exercises and their retreats. Okay, I don't have time to get to it today until the very end, but the idea of a retreat is related to the encampment, is related to the hazing in fraternities. Remember, I did a talk on Kamala Harris. She's comes out of one of the secret societies at Howard University, historically black colleges. This seems to be a cultural universal too. That they have these in China. They're known colloquially as triad. They're in Japan. They're known colloquially as yakuza. They're everywhere. Everywhere there are 3 or more people, you will find a secret society who have this certain code that we like to read about. We think it's just fantasy, perhaps, or maybe we think, we watch Michael Francis and think we know all about the Genovese family, and so you understand that this is based on historical reality. And by the way, these old families, the old school families of the Sicilians, they were very much hooked up with these Knights of Columbus, the different knight orders, and with the Vatican, and with the mainstream political system. You know this by now. So what I'm telling you here should not come as much of a surprise. The only shock to you is that I am applying it to a situation that's unfolding, and we don't even know where it's going yet, what the end game is. And I don't like where it's going. That's why I wanted to give a talk by this Sunday, so I could put out my warning to the wise fools. That's what sophomore means, by the way. It means a wise fool. You've been at university for a year, so you think you know everything. Or you could be a senior and you think, oh, I got it down. I'm on my way to grad school, or I just got admitted to Harvard Law, or I'm going to get an MD. You don't know nothing, right? And by the way, all these institutions have their induction and bonding situations. That's why at the undergraduate level, they start teaching you how to work within these systems that you wind up with, number one. Secondly, they're also recruiting grounds for these mass actions that take place on the street or in institutions. And these same people that you're seeing today, 20 years from now, are going to be judges or heading a cabinet at the White House, who cut their teeth on these false notions of what the American histories are really like. They think they're doing God's work, right? And in truth, they're doing the work of the dark forces that shall not be named, right? So let me, instead of keep blathering on here, let me show you a little bit, another clip here to help underscore. Here's Beltane. Here's the Celtic origins of it. And we're talking Celtic, we're also talking about Germanic, Teutonic, right? This is material that Himmler and his people loved. And there's a professor, he's a skeptic, by the way. He mocks, I think, I don't know if that's too strong a word, the whole Nazi occultic tradition. It's a book by Eric Kurlander. He's an academic. It's a good book, by the way. But you have to understand that he discounts their efficacy. I don't. I take it seriously. The efficacy of the occultists, by the way, who are still with us. He's writing this book like it's history. It's called Hitler's Monsters. Check it out. Right, just like Annie Jacobson writes about the CIA as if it's past. That was then. This is now. No, it's not that. So don't get it twisted and put me in that bag there. I'm talking about forces that are very much in play on May 5th, 2024, that affect your life and my life, with most of us never even realizing it to the day of our death. So here is the Celtic overview of Beltane. May 1st.
St. Walpurgis Night, the Christian holiday, the Night of Witches, the Czech holiday, and the Germanic festival of May Day all have in common, apart from taking place at the end of April/beginning of May. Turns out they all might be rooted in the same ancient Celtic festival, Beltane. Yes, the reason why people make merry around giant wooden poles every May 1st with the flowers and the garlands and the hallucinogenic tea, that last part's from the movie Midsummer, my bad, is because,
It's a good movie, by the way. Check it out, Midsummer.
It's a fertility festival, isn't it? The phallic symbolism of the maypole at first glance seems obvious. However, there is a school of thought that says if maypoles were meant to represent phalluses, then historically people would have carved them to look more like phalluses, which there's no evidence of. So maybe the maypole's symbolism isn't rooted in fertility, but mythology. Indeed, some scholars argue that the maypole is a representation of the axis mundi, or world axis, a central cosmic pillar connecting the different planes of existence. And more specifically, given that ancient Germanic peoples, like ancient Celtic peoples, considered certain trees to be sacred, it's possible the maypole represents a specific iteration of the axis mundi known as the world tree, with its branches spreading out into the different realms of the universe and its roots reaching down into the underworld. And here's where the theory of a Celtic origin for the maypole and May Day really starts to take root. I'm sorry. To clarify, this isn't my theory. It belonged to J.A. McCulloch, one of Scotland's most famed Celtic scholars. McCulloch equated the lighting of bonfires on hillsides, one of the, quote, chief ritual acts at Beltane, with the kindling of German need fires, which was a superstitious practice employed by shepherds to protect livestock from disease. The shepherds would use branches to create friction fires and then drive their livestock between them. Incidentally, in one...
Okay, keep in mind this image and the reality, the ritualistic as well as practical effect of fire symbology, fire ritual, fire-based ritual. That's why I chose that pic today to illustrate the talk, this sort of glow here. And I associate these campus riots, I guess, police riots, if you will, depending on which side you're on, because you're almost forced to pick a side. I associate with fire, flashbang grenades, I include in that, and the various explosive projectiles that are shot at peaceful protesters, as well as trash can fires and burning vehicles. It's all very much, rather than random criminal behavior, part of the larger controlled ritual that was meant to be in order to unleash these energies and also to harvest them ritualistically, right? In addition to taking the biometric photographs and experimenting with directed energy weapons on the people who were at these events. And in addition to getting the raw data that are going to be used by behavioral scientists to study the riots of 2024 so they can refine the techniques of future staged events or pseudo-events, right? They get more refined all the time, and pretty soon AI will be used in order to stage these events completely in our mind. Then there'll be no property damage. And everybody will be happy. It'll be the ultimate in repression, political repression, because that's where this is all leading, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already figured out. More authoritarianism, greater political repression, especially on the university campus. All right, I hate to spoil it for you, but that's where it's heading. It's going to be airport-style security checks, backscatter examinations in order to get onto campus. They're getting us acclimated to all of that now. They also did a mass, of the student body when there was the pandemic going on. So this is part of the incremental clampdown on one of the last remaining free spaces in American society and the Western democracies. I know someone saying that we're not a democracy, we're a politics. Come on. You can't teach me anything, really. Okay, so shut up. Just listen to what I have to say instead of going to knee-jerk mode and pulling out all this old information, right? Because you're retarding our progress. All right, listen to what I have to say here. So it's no coincidence that we have these ancient holidays to coincide, but it's also finals week or close to it. Around the schedules differ between campuses, right? Finals, it's the sum total of everything you learn the whole year or the semester, the quarter, is going to be tested, but it's interrupted by all these disruptions, right? And some people are saying we're willing to forego our diplomas in order to achieve lasting peace in Palestine. Which, by the way, most of you, I don't even have to tell you, most of the people here know that that's how the Knights Templar got their bones. They were in Palestine. They were protecting, quote unquote, the pilgrims who went there in order to visit the what some people call the Temple Mount, the other people call the shrine, Jerusalem, the holy city, which is now officially the capital of Israel, thanks to Orange Man, President Donald Trump and his Israeli backers, and vice versa, right? They have a very cozy relationship. Don't forget that when you're at the ballot booth in a few months from now, right? So it also, these events coincides with graduation. You get to wear the Masonic robe and the mortar board and with the little tassel. Now, I know at the University of Michigan, some people tried to draw attention to themselves by saying, "Free Palestine, free Palestine." And by the way, I'm not minimizing the suffering that's going on there. All right, I'm not mocking it. I think that protest is legitimate. All civil protests is legitimate. I'm simply addressing the hidden forces that are orchestrating idealistic, principled young people, orchestrating these types of demonstrations for the greater good of these families that you don't belong to. We don't belong to any of these clubs, right? I'm paraphrasing the great Irish American George Carlin. It's a big club and you don't belong into it. And even then, it's a very tiny, exclusive club. Now, there are some that think they're involved because they get to wear the regalia and they carry the swords and they have the feathered hats and they say, "Yeah, I'm a Knights Templar," or "I'm a Knights of Columbus," and they get to march around, or they get to wear a fez and drive around a little car. I'm not talking about those people, right? And I'm not talking about you live action role players. I'm talking about the real ballers there, the OGs that use the useful idiots in this fashion. You know this. So it's graduation, it's spring, and it fits all in there with labor, with whether you're a communist, atheist, you're a Gaia worshiper, a New Ager, or you're a Christian, or Muslim, or Jain, whatever it is. We all have the four seasons, right? We all live on planet Earth that has common astrological phenomenon, and different groups worship them or theorize them differently. So that it all comes together with this type of action that's taking place, including human sacrifice, in addition to human harvesting or energy harvesting, soul harvesting. Okay, let's take a quick look at, and again, you can find this on TubeView and you can read. There's tons of literature on it. So I'll just give you a flavor. If you'll let me cue it up here. This is about the Knights Templar.
Knights Templar, one of history's most mysterious armies, were an underground fighting force, more secretive than the Illuminati.
By 1312, the Templars became so powerful that the Pope ordered them to be hunted down and destroyed.
As the story goes, the Templars are rounded up, tortured, and burned alive. Thousands of once all-powerful knights vanish overnight, and with them, their hidden treasures and immense wealth vanished, gone.
But new evidence recently discovered in ancient navigational charts suggests that they may have survived and rebuilt the Templar order somewhere in the New World. This is the Zeno map. Some believe it documents a top-secret mission to keep the Sacred Order alive. Led by a Templar named Henry Sinclair, it is said that roughly 100 Templars traveled from the north of Scotland to America in 1398, nearly a century before Columbus set foot on the continent.
So what is this map trying to show us?
Well, if this secret expedition was heading to the New World, then the final destination would be the westernmost point on the map, which, if we look over here, it's Estotiland. What is Estotiland? Where is that supposed to be? And if we look at the route between Europe and Estotiland, you have these massive islands in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean that we know don't exist.
These are all phantom islands, meaning they don't correspond directly to any landmass on a modern map. What are these islands trying to represent? Finding out could be the key to discovering the Templar's secret destination.
All right, so if we compare these two maps, Scotia is Scotland.
Clearly.
Norvegia would be Norway.
Right.
We've got Iceland, we've got Greenland, which takes us over here to that western point on the map. So if we take a look, with everything else in position, then Estotiland would be Nova Scotia.
Well, that's actually really interesting because Nova Scotia in Latin means New Scotland. And as we know, Henry Sinclair's voyage left from Scotland.
So is the Xenomap trying to tell us that Nova Scotia was the end destination of Henry Sinclair's secret expedition?
And could this be the location of where the Templars resettled in America?
Okay, I'm back here. There's all kinds of speculation about it, and this is kind of a dramatized pop version of a history. Most of what they're talking about is rooted in scholarship, and there is some pretty good evidence, to my satisfaction at least, that there was a very strong Templar presence in what later became the United States of America. And this is way before Cristoforo Colombo, or as we know as Christopher Columbus, or Cristobal Colon, right? And by the way, we learned in grade school, his three ships, the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria, their flags. Wasn't it the Knights of Malta cross on the flags there? Hey, Christopher Columbus himself was connected. And these are the people who believe that they never lost control and still claim ownership of America. We don't care about 1776, the Bill of Rights, the U.S. Constitution. These are just epiphenomenal documents. They don't care about the Federal Reserve, right? All these little niceties that they've erected. They've helped erect their own system there that they don't have to follow. We have to follow it, but they don't have to follow it. And there's a fiscal crisis. A guy, I guess he's an economist by the name of James O'Connor that wrote a book published in 1973 called The Fiscal Crisis of Capitalism. And we're undergoing one right now. So it's not a coincidence that the spring of 2024 is going to have these massive riots and demonstrations at the different campuses that's going to be harvesting the labor of young people who are entering into the non-existent or severely truncated, reduced labor market, right? And having them point the finger instead at country A, B, or C, or scapegoat X, Y, Z, whereas this has all been plotted out as part of this centuries-long notion that what now is the United States of America was going to be the cash cow for these very well-connected families. All right, so continue. We're going to continue with the immolation, that is setting fire of the human beings, because that's going to complete our talk today in a moment here. And this is the immolation, the auto de fe of Jacques de Molay. He, at the time, was the head of the Knights Templar, and as most of you know, they became very strong through usury and banking and lending, and amassed incredible wealth and power in addition to military control of large swathes of land. So he ran afoul of the King of France and was burned at the stake, Jacques de Molay. And you know the story. That's how Friday the 13th became a day of bad luck, because that's the day that on which Jacques de Molay was executed, burned at the stake. Here we go. The first part is some historians and archaeologists who are searching out this history. Now, this is the type of resources I'd like to see spent at the university in this type of study, because your undergraduates can get their hands dirty by going to archaeological digs. They can study documents. They can learn ancient Greek. They can learn Hebrew. They can learn all the incredible skills that required to do the research. And at the same time, they are unveiling their writing the history as it really is, not as it was written by the Rockefeller commissions or John Dewey or these other characters that we know about. So let's take a look at these academics who are studying seriously what we're talking about here. One moment, I have to cue it up here.
Ariane Fussel from Göttingen. His aim is to reveal the true story of the Freemasons. The search for clues will take him around the world.
Okay, excuse me, I'm going to try to find the section where Jacques de Molay is burned at the stake, but it might take me a moment, or I might just skip it. 1 second.
Who was a member and what rank they held.
I'll just let it run to get an idea.
In England, these architects referred to themselves as Freemasons. They moved from cathedral to cathedral, offering their services. In those days, ordinary folk lived in dark, low huts. So for them, the Gothic cathedrals built by the master stonemasons, the Freemasons, were architectural miracles. The Bauhütten were a secret society of knowledge.
These weren't simple masons, but architects, an intellectual elite, in other words, who had access to monarchs, who were at the very apex of society. This had nothing to do with some low trade, but people who had specific technical expertise and who, naturally, were also able to exercise a certain degree of power in society.
Does this mean, in fact, that fugitive Templars and ambitious architects got together? Marian Fussel has received permission to view historical documents in the secret society's internal archives.
Okay, maybe Governor Ron DeSantis can sit on committees. I'll be glad to serve as a volunteer to renew the curriculum to do this type of study, because he's defunded certain parts of the so-called New College of Florida. He's gotten rid of the DEI. I think he's gotten rid of so-called gender studies and the diversity center and all that. And he's brought in athletics, which I think all young people should be required to take physical education courses. And this is the type of scholarship that because I'm about solutions too. I'm not just going to say, oh yeah, it's just one giant cult and blah blah blah. Just speaking these sort of generalities. No, I'm looking for solutions, and they are at hand. And the only reason I'm taking the time to walk us through this exercise is to demonstrate the validity and the practicality of renewal in higher education, Hamamoto style. All right, because I've done the research, I've done the work on it, and I was punished for it at the University of California, Davis, who was the chancellor, the mean and cruel, sadistic Linda P.B. Katehi and their henchmen. One of them looked like a Nazi, by the way. He looked like a combination of a Nazi / Jesuit. Maybe he was both. Maybe it was a double whammy. So I'm used to dealing with these characters. I'm sorry to talk about myself, but the reason I'm passionate about it is because this is my world, right? Joe Rogan might have been pretty good on Fear Factor and Pucker Factor and all these little shows he hosted, and maybe in the Octagon and in mixed martial arts. But this is my world, okay? And I'm free to talk about it with authority. All right, we're not going to see about the, you read about it yourself, the immolation of Jacques de Molay. He was later revenged, by the way. The king died, and Jacques Molay lives on at various institutions. And by the way, a lot of them bear eerie resemblance to Gothic cathedrals. You notice that? just go, if you haven't already, go to an older established, especially Ivy League campus, and you'll see Gothicism. You'll see collegiate Gothic. They even have a style named after it, collegiate Gothic, or it's Romanesque. What are these signals? What's the semiotics of these buildings? Is it just to pretend that you're getting a bigger bang for your dollar, right? For undergraduates? Yeah, it's supposed to evoke awe, but there's a whole metaphysical, historical, political, economic tradition behind it that they never tell you the secret. You're never going to be inducted to it unless they see you as a man or a woman of promise and they tap you to be brought in. And they have 4 years as undergraduate to evaluate you and to see whether you are worthy to progress to the next degree. Right? You're going to get your undergraduate degree. What about your graduate degree? Anyway, you get the point if you've been to college. So I'm going to have to shave off a little bit of the critique here. We're going to make these historical jumps here that may not make any sense, but trust me, there's a connection historically, politically, maybe even financially between these earlier late medieval, early modern secret societies and the Third Reich and the Fourth Reich, which is here in the United States, right? If you saw Lena Poo, her talk, incredible last Sunday, and it went, I think it went over 12,000 views in less than a week. But she talked about Professor Armand Schwann, who was a paperclip scientist who had his lifelong career at the University of Pennsylvania, doing all these bogus studies to affect the health of untold millions of Americans by his fake standards for cell phone, what we call cell phones, right? That's just one example. And most of you know about paperclip, right? So this is not, by now, by 2024, most people know about this history. So when you watch the next clip, you're not going to see it as being far-fetched. When you hear about Dr. Mengele, Josef Mengele, whose body was found in Brazil, how did he get there after World War II? Well, there's many books on it. Or you can look on Tubi if you're lazy. Or you can watch movies and say, oh, that was a great piece of fiction. It's not. Dr. Josef Mengele, we have our own contemporary Josef Mengeles. Right? They put the Nazi doctors to shame. I'm not even going to name them because I don't want this video to be taken down. So it's all very plausible because it is real. It's rooted in history. This is the type of history that should be taught at the university, not so-called diversity, equality, inclusion. Nah. No, that's passé. It's been going on for 30 years already. You guys need to retool, all right? GLBTQ plus, whoever utters that alphabet anymore, you're obsolete. You need to study New World Order theory. You need to subscribe to my channel and sign on to my Patreon and learn the real intellectual history of America and the world, who I have gathered from the great masters myself. I didn't come up with this. Don't have enough time to name check the incredible geniuses that have influenced my work here that you're seeing. And I've interviewed a couple of them and I've given talks on them. If you want to look at my playlist, that's why you should subscribe. Right? Okay, let's take a look at this Fourth Reich concept here. One moment. And I'm not going to play a lot of it, just
When I was a child, a film came out that many of you, I'm sure, have seen, The Boys from Brazil. The premise was a little bit silly, but the film featured a secret plot hatched by a load of old Nazis living in South America led by none other than Dr. Josef Mengele, famously played by Gregory Peck. The film hit cinemas in 1978, and the real Mengele died, unknown to anyone, in Brazil in 1979. The point is, the film's premise built on that of an earlier novel and film, The Odessa File by Frederick Forsyth, which was published in 1972, about a reporter investigating a secret conspiracy of former Nazis in West Germany. The 1970s were a fertile time for such conspiracies, not the least of which was the discovery in 1972 of Martin Bormann's remains in West Berlin. It all appeared to be quite possible that such an organization like Odessa and such dastardly plots such as outlined in The Boys from Brazil could exist, perhaps to create something called the Fourth Reich, a secret Nazi-dominated shadow government in West Germany to succeed the failed Third Reich that apparently died in May 1945. Or did it? Well, I'm happy to tell you that while I can't prove the existence of the Odessa organization, I can tell you that a plot to place the Nazis into power in West Germany definitely existed, and was the brainchild of a senior Nazi official who coincidentally managed to escape from war-torn Berlin in the same night and in the same group as Martin Bormann. That man was Werner Naumann, a peripheral member of Hitler's inner circle. No one ever talks about him, but he was a very powerful and influential man nonetheless. Naumann was the last state secretary in the Reich Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda, Goebbels's propaganda ministry. A Prussian, he had joined the Nazi Party in 1928. Unlike many of the senior party figures around Hitler, Naumann was too young to have fought in World War I, having been born in 1909. A political economist, he joined the Sturmabteilung, the SA or Brown Shirts, and by the time Hitler came to power in 1933, he held the rank of SA Brigadeführer. In 1938, Naumann became the personal aide to Dr. Joseph Goebbels, propaganda minister, and in 1942 was promoted to state secretary. Also a member of the circle of friends of the Reichsführer SS, Heinrich Himmler, he was made an SS Gruppenführer, equivalent to a World War II Army Major General. Naumann played an important role as state secretary in the propaganda department, being Goebbels's second-in-command, and he also represented Himmler's financial interests in the massive industrial firm Kali and Salz, now called K&S, one of the huge industrial enterprises that Himmler had brought under his influence, along with such firms as IG Farben, Siemens, Ferrostahl, Otto Wulff, and Unilever, whose boards contained many senior SS officers by war's end.
Those Third Reich corporations, companies are still in existence. They're worth much, much money, and it's nothing for them to hand money over to these different NGOs and 501(c)(3) corporations that provide community organizing services or to fund retreats. That's just a drop in the bucket of their business. And that's written in their budget anyway. So if you want to know where the financing comes from, it's not just from the deep pockets of George Soros. You understand that? We've got the Third Reich continuity of government here in the US. And if you're going to point fingers in any one group, you're going to talk about the Paperclip diaspora, including financiers, not just physicists and psychiatrists, but a whole array of people who do intellectual labor, economics, who entered American, that is US and British universities, and rewrote the curriculum to fit the needs of what was emerging as the New World Order. And some of their lower echelon lieutenants are helping to orchestrate these campus disturbances. And they have almost endless amount of resources to execute that. So we can go on and on. That's a whole channel in itself, or a whole talk in itself. A lot of you know more about it than I do. So keep researching. You're on the right track. And you're no longer considered a Looney Tunes anymore. And even if you're not interested in history, you might be interested to know that Gisela Bündchen is a twin. You know the supermodel Gisela Bündchen? Isn't she married to Tom Brady, or a football player? She has an identical twin. She's from Brazil, which until recently has been one of the prime spots for scouting models of a certain Aryan racial phenotype, I should say. It's Gisela Bündchen. And there was for a certain time, there was a whole population explosion of identical twins. And guess what? Around that time, the infamous Dr. Josef Mengele was head operation there. He had a laboratory going on. So is it too much of a leap to imagine that he was doing his infamous twins studies in Bariloche, Brazil? I don't think so. So I don't think Ira Levin, who wrote The Boys from Brazil, he also wrote Rosemary's Baby. Man, Ira Levin knew some stuff. We need a critical biography on Ira Levin. For you English professors there who are still rocking the DEI and the GLBTQ, why don't you do a literary analysis of Ira Levin's fiction instead, right? That would be more productive and it would help the cause quite a bit. All right. I'm not telling you how to do your business because I hate when people tell me how I should do my business, right? But there's all kinds of opportunities here for you if you want to look at it realistic. Let go of the GLBTQ and all the social justice, all the D. That's all gone. It's disappearing. It's like it's a mist now. But I have faith that you'll start studying New World Order theory and follow up on some of these books, some of these references here, and you too will arrive at a position that I maintain today in 2024. Okay, so let's move into the final landing, the final approach, and continue and conclude with the motifs of burning, of immolation, like a Jacques de Molay being burned by the king on the orders of the King of France on Friday the 13th. Jacques de Molay, you are avenged. That's what the assassin cried out. Or the bonfires at these events, these campus events. So that brings us naturally to, by the way, there was, this is about 2 weeks ago, there was a man who set himself on fire in front of the Trump trial. I think in Southern District of New York, I think, right outside the courtroom. Well, not the courtroom, the building. All right. And there's a small park there. And he, well, you know the story, I'm sure. It wasn't exactly around Walpurgisnacht or May Day, but it was close. It was close to it. So he's immolating himself. And we don't want to see any sort of copycats on that, but I think immolation is in the cards. We're going to see it in the popular culture somehow, either in movies, Netflix series, or maybe on the streets. So with that, let's turn to a Burning Man. Remember the Burning Man phenomenon of a number of years ago, not too far. There are 3 or 4 or 5 academic studies of Burning Man that I have read. These are anthropologists who went there to check it out, and they're handing over that research over to their paymasters who want to figure out how these communities operate, how they function, governance, resilience, all these other key buzzwords. They study burning very carefully, and one of the keystone events is the burning of the Wicker Man. Remember, if you don't, let me refresh your memory in a moment. I'm running out of time, so I can't run more than that, but you get the idea. The Burning Man. So now we're circling back over to Walpurgisnacht, and we're circling back over to May Day in these rituals of renewal, death through renewal, the death cult, right? And I've given a number of talks on neo-paganism in America and various ritualistic aspects of seemingly benign entertainment or activity that are in truth rooted in the occult. Next, let me go to a clip of a ritual dance, a May dance from the movie The Wicker Man that was released in 1973. I encourage all of you to watch it. It's a masterpiece. It's Wicker Man, and you'll have. I'll tell you what. I'll post some information on my Patreon to give you an idea of the backstory. I even have a copy of the script if you want to read it. But it's a film that, in fact, I have a book that's coming. It's on order that studies the Wicker Man by a number of different film scholars. A lot of different essays on it. Maybe I can share with that a little later on. I just found out about it. Otherwise, I could have talked about it today, even though I'm running out of time. But here's the clip. Here is the scene where we draw full circle, not just within the context of the movies, but within the context of this talk here on the esoteric character of these encampments, right? These ritual encampments at the universities, these occult institutions of higher learning. Here. Well, I am grateful that we ended with a prayer because that's what we'll need in order to throw back the evil that has been unleashed over the past several days on the institutions of higher learning, not just in the US, but there have been actions in London, Berlin, and Paris as well. And it seems to be a larger global movement by these very same secret societies that have been guiding the course of human history for the last several centuries. And let me finish up by showing you why it's relevant to the university at street level, at ground level. This is all what we're seeing now recently, and most of it's kind of died out now. They're in the cleanup phase on the campuses. Has been done for the initiation, the graduation, the commencement ritual for people who didn't even participate. And these are the individuals who are going to be inducted to step forward into this system, so they too will be sacrificed to the Wicker Man when the time comes in their truncated career that they thought so highly of when they entered into the university. So let me end with two pieces. One is a retreat, a clip from a retreat at Georgetown University. It's a Catholic institution, specifically a Jesuit institution. These retreats, again, like these encampments, have a very important ritualistic, metaphysical importance. They're not just meet and greets. And by the way, for those of you who think, oh, yeah, it's so immature, it's so sophomoric, you do that at work. I can't tell you how many retreats I had to go to, how many conferences I had to go where we did all these trust and bonding exercises by some consultant, some labor consultant, right? It was just a giant mind fuck. It never worked on me. That's why I could never hold a job, because as one of my bosses, his name was Bob, this is for Addison Wesley Publishers, a textbook. He says, you just got to sit around the campfire and start singing along with everybody else. And I said, fuck that. I'm out of here. I don't want to wind up in Wicker Man singing Christian hymns. I'll sing the Christian hymns, but I'll do it as a free man. Okay, so you undergraduates, don't go on no retreats. Don't allow yourself to be love bombed because you're away from home and your mommy's not there to cook for you and do your laundry, right? You're very vulnerable. I understand that you want to meet a girl, you want to meet a boy, you want to have a real life boyfriend, you want a relationship, you want to nerd out with somebody about Sudoku. I get it. I understand that, right? But just be aware of what you're being brought into. Okay, here's the Georgetown retreat. I won't show it all, but you'll recognize it. You don't even have to have gone to college.
In any physics classes at Georgetown, but I did a lot of physics in high school.
Oh.
So I like to think I'm good at it.
Please, won't you wait? Won't you stay? At least until the sun goes down. When you're gone, I lose faith. I lose everything I have found. Heartstrings, violence. That's what I hear when you're by my side. Yeah, that's what I hear when you're by my side. But when you're gone, the music goes. Whoa, 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 whoa. I lose my rhythm, lose my soul. Whoa, 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 whoa. So hear me out before you say the night is over. I don't want you to know that we gotta carry on. So don't let this be our final song.
Yeah, there's always a quote unquote facilitator or a trainer there. It's usually some grad student or someone from so-called student services, or it's some MS, what is it called? Marriage, family counselor, some psychotherapists that run these organizations. I could never handle them. And I guess that's why my career just petered out, because I just didn't play well with others. Something's wrong with something's dreadfully wrong with me. Maybe I just didn't want to end up in the Wicker Man. Finally, and I'll come back after we should see a little bit. This goes on at all the campuses, large, small, great, prestigious institutions, community college. It goes on everywhere. Here's one from Harvard. This is a first year. It's our first year students, because they're clueless. Many of them are, the children of immigrants. Their parents don't know what university's like. So they're going to have it burned into them. Let's see here. This is the Harvard program.
So the conversation about going to college with my parents was something that shifted throughout the years. They didn't really talk much about college because they didn't really go.
Growing up, Harvard has always been my dream school. And honestly, when I was applying, I never really thought I would get in.
To me, college was kind of a very foreign idea up until I got to high school.
Every single day, I remind myself that I'm here for myself, I'm here for my parents, and to continue the hard work and dedication that my parents put into me.
FIRE is really a program to welcome students who are first generation or low income or come from underrepresented backgrounds. And it serves as a form of to help transition students into the campus of Harvard.
When you join FIRE, you will be part of a community of students from similar backgrounds as yourself. You will be placed in a FIRE family with 2 peer mentors who will be there to support and help you navigate an institution like Harvard, and you will be joined with other Fireflies in your FIRE families as well.
A FIRE family constitutes of Fireflies, which are the incoming first years, and then FIRE team leaders or FIRE parents. FIRE families are the people we stick together for all of the fun events, the challenges, the panels.
You will also be connected to different resources on campus that are important to helping you thrive on this campus, whether that be different support offices like the Mignoni Center for Career Success, the Academic Resource Center, the Financial Aid Office.
And then on top of everything, FIRE also introduces you to peers that are coming in with you the same year who will, even if they don't become your closest friends, eventually become a sort of support network and who will ultimately also strengthen your sense of belonging on campus.
There are so many opportunities to build connections, make lifelong friends, have fun, and feel a lot more ready and prepared to enter the school year. It's definitely a very fulfilling experience.
Fire is really a place that allows for you to challenge yourself and also learn from others in a way that strengthens your sense of belonging and kind of helps give the tools so that when you get
Harvard has always been my dream school, and
Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I just realized it, but that program, I mean, I heard it, but now it's sunk in even more so. That program's called Fire. Isn't that what this whole theme has been about? The metaphysical fire, the destruction and the creation of a new type of person who's going to be promoting a certain ideological agenda. Now it's called woke, right? They're going to retool it and go back and respond a little bit, but rest assured they're going to come up with some new programs here. So even though we will eventually defeat this particular phase of academic repression, intellectual repression, there's a much deeper political economic reality at work here that I hopefully today showed you the connections, demonstrated the historical connections and what we're faced with here. So thanks again. I'm not here to judge any of the undergraduates. I was there at one point, and eventually I figured out that I was being played and groomed to become a servitor of empire, which later became the title of my most recent book. It took me, some decades, but this is not about me. This is about the future of America and about the larger political economic challenges that we face going ahead. So thank you very much for putting up with me for the first 10 minutes or so. And we'll see you next week, God willing. Thank you very much. Bye.